All right, guys. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. How's it going, everyone? This is Dilmange Aur Hamad with your favorite co-host.
Ali Qazi.
How's it going, everyone? We have a great show today because we're really excited to be interviewing Tayyib Khalil, someone who I think will now go down in the pages of Pakistani rock history as truly a figure who has contributed a remarkable achievement. Or that is in the form of his most recently released book called Rockistan. Really just a remarkable contribution to the history of Pakistani rock. And as you know, the entire reason why we in fact exist is because we want to be able to preserve this history and pass it on for everyone to know and understand and cherish. पाकिस्तानी रॉक जैसी कोई चीज़ दुनिया में है नहीं और ना कभी आएगी तो without further ado we're going to introduce Tayyib, how are you doing? कैसे हैं आप?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm fine. How about you?
Walaikum salam. Really good to have you. Thank you so much for having us. Tayyib, we are just so pleased to have you क्योंकि जो मतलब और आपने सुनी भी होगी ये चीज़ and I'm sure you're probably getting tired of it, but or perhaps you're not, because obviously this is the product of probably years of effort and laboring. Lekin, just want to say thank you for this contribution. Really is just a tremendous achievement. तो पहले ये बताएं कि tell us about yourself. Who are you? Who is Tayyib? Start with anything. क्या motivations थे? क्या inspiration है आपकी? And what do you do yourself? What's your background?
I'm basically a mechanical engineer by profession. I graduated from High Tech University, Texla. And Pakistani rock music, I bachpan se sunta raha, even before I knew what rock and pop are. So, but I was more inclined to guitar-oriented and drums music. So, hua ye ke I would always read the literature about rock music, especially covered by Nadeem Farooq Pracha and MAQ. They were the forefront music critics of Pakistan. So, after many years passed, I'm a writer by passion. So I सोचा कि how about I write a book? When I was thinking कि मैं किस पे लिखूं, तो it instantly linked me कि how about writing on Pakistani rock music? इस तरह की book पहले तो नहीं कभी लिखी गई. And मैं ये बताना चाहूँगा I don't work in the media, तो मेरे लिए बहुत मुश्किल था कि reaching out to nearly 40 musicians. उनको अपने आप को introduce करवाना, उनसे questions लेना. Not everyone was willing to answer my question, but I'm tremendously grateful to everyone who participated in this journey.
Hi, yaar,
Right.
Ahmad, right from the get-go, it's probably a bad idea to get negative, लेकिन ये तैयब कह रहे हैं ना कि and even for us in our podcast, like the people who should be doing this work in terms of preserving history and in terms of preserving history, they're not doing the job, right? And that's why we have to step in and do our part. And like Tayyab has done an amazing job here, and this is something that's like I read through a lot of it. By the way, Tayyab, hum log yaar, like I read most of the first half of the book. I didn't get to finish it. Like I can tell you the details and everything that Tayyab has put in there. It's remarkable, man. Or it's this book is a huge contribution.
It really is. And I mean, obviously, like you said, Tayyib, I can imagine कितना मतलब मुश्किल तो खैर I think is an understatement कि सबसे इस तरह सी rapport banana कि भाई this is who I am, you can trust me that this will be a well-written product and something that will be true to form and have integrity in the work. तो पहला सवाल तो ये मतलब I do want to get into the details of exactly how you built that trusted relationship. But जैसे आपने कहा कुछ लोगों ने शायद मतलब obviously जवाब नहीं दिया हो या trust नहीं किया हो, लेकिन काफी लोगों ने it seems like I mean obviously besides it seems like you got in touch with Salman Ahmed, you got in touch with Adi Azmat, you got in touch with Khurram Jabbar Khan, you seem to have gotten in touch with Ran. I mean there are so many amazing artists and figures in the history of Pakistani rock music who have been your sources. तो मतलब पहले तो ये बताएं कि जैसे अली भाई और मैं बात करते आ रहे हैं, हमारे फैंस को भी पता है कि हमारी इनिशियल मतलब जो एक जो लम्हा होता है ना कि मतलब पाकिस्तानी रॉक म्यूजिक, क्योंकि हर पाकिस्तानी रॉक म्यूजिक फैन की एक कहानी है कि यार वो बस जैसे हमारी ये कहानी है कि कम से कम अली भाई आई थिंक और उमेर भाई की, आई थिंक अली भाई करेक्ट मी इफ आई एम रॉन्ग, आप लोग you guys went to a House of Blues show I think in the 90s in Los Angeles, and that's when you first saw Junoon.
Actually, I went to another one before that. Just given I've mentioned this quite a bit, and like there was only a handful of people there, and then Junoon just played like they were playing for like 10,000 people.
Right, at like a high school auditorium or something.
लेकिन in the तो ये बता रहे ना कि Nadeem Farooq Paracha and Mac, I've actually been reading, and you yourself too, Ahmad. हम लोग भी इन्हीं के articles वगैरह पढ़ के ना, जितनी भी हम लोग को मालूमात है और interviews वगैरह देख के
as well.
है ना, तो
yeah, और NFP की book,
उनकी book भी है, उसमें भी काफी details
yeah,
right?
Yeah. तो yeah, so Tayyab, tell us, was there a particular moment आपकी मतलब जैसे बचपन में कुछ concert पे गए या कुछ show देखा आपने?
Nothing in particular, क्योंकि जिस मैं कम्युनिटी में रहता था वहाँ है ना कॉन्सर्ट्स होते तो थे, बट रॉक बैंड्स इतने आते नहीं थे. नॉट इवन जुनून हैज प्लेड देयर. मैं पहले है ना रहता था FFC गोट माची. आई एम नॉट श्योर इफ यू हैव हर्ड ऑफ इट. ये सादकाबाद के करीब एक छोटी सी टाउन है. तो क्या कहते हैं, ज़्यादातर मेरी जो सोर्सेज थी ऑफ रॉक म्यूजिक वो द म्यूजिक एंड इंडस म्यूजिक चैनल्स थे. तो
right,
yeah, Indus
the music channel, music with a K.
Yeah, 24 hours से ये है ना रन होते थे, so it was a lot for me to consume, and obviously मैं फिर passion for rock music है ना बड़ा, and सिर्फ टीवी के हद तक नहीं, मैं ये नदीम फारूक पराचा, फसी ज़का एंड MAQ एंड और भी काफी ज्यादा म्यूजिक जर्नलिस्ट हैं.
बड़े अच्छे
उनका
shows होते थे यार उसमें. बल्कि मैं अभी कल परसों ही देख रहा था an old show of an old interview of Ali Azmat by this guy Fasi Zaka, और भी अच्छे एक जो Cell 224 याद है?
जी याद है मुझे.
वो तो बहुत ही जबरदस्त प्रोग्राम था. उसमें जो इंटरव्यूज
मुझे बड़ी मुश्किल से मिली थी फॉर दिस बुक बिकॉज़ इट्स नॉट ऑनलाइन.
यार हमने तो सारा YouTube पे ही देखा ही है, क्योंकि मैं तो to be honest like there's a running gag on our podcast. Hamad has to mention, and it's probably time for you to mention that, Hamad. कि Hamad is the only one who's actually lived in Pakistan. और मैं और मेरा भाई उमर, हम लोग तो US में ही हैं. हम लोग रियाद में होते थे पहले. मेरी अपब्रिंगिंग थोड़ी वहाँ की थी, फिर हम लोग तब से US में ही हैं. एंड पाकिस्तान में एक दफ़ा गया हूँ सिर्फ, और वो भी लास्ट ईयर.
नहीं हाँ, यही तो बात है. फर्क ये है कि मतलब I think until last year I was the only one who ever even stepped foot on Pakistani soil, so I think that was the difference. Lekin I mean, as you can see, Tayyab, Ali and Umair are not lacking whatsoever in their knowledge of the history, and
it's all from remote, just that revolution that took place, and you mentioned this in your book Junoon.com when that first came up. उसके बाद से जो इंटरनेट पे और वेबसाइट्स आना शुरू हुई हैं पाकिस्तानी म्यूजिक की, एंड जब यूट्यूब आया तब तो सब खुल गया. फिर तब तो there was access to like everything, so that's how I got exposed to everything.
वैसे अब ढेर सारे रॉक बैंड्स की वेबसाइट्स डिफंक्ट हो गई हैं, they don't exist anymore, so it was very hard for me to collect that data again. काफी चीजें तो मेरी मेमोरी में ingrained है, even though those websites don't exist anymore.
काफी information तो उनकी वो message boards जो होते थे उस पे हम लोग एक दूसरे से लड़ाइयाँ करके वो करते थे, याद है?
And I think Tayyab, you talk about that in some portions. You talk about the fact that Ali Hamza stayed up like 5 nights in a row just to learn web design ताकि अपनी website जो है वो launch की जाए. जब उनका I think सुनो के मैं हूँ जवान album निकला था, आप ये भी कहते हैं कि याद नहीं आ रहा है, लेकिन there were a couple of band members who sort of weren't on the same page, and then they were very transparent on the message boards. So I would love to talk to you a little bit later as well. कि मतलब obviously you talk about this कि rock का scene जो है वो थोड़ा सा dip हुआ है, लेकिन hopefully there is this resurgence and many bands continue to be central to the scene. So, let's get into the methodology. So, it seems like obviously you've been interested in this topic for a while, and mechanical engineer, but writing is your passion about this, and this is it's even more remarkable that you have that background and you were able to achieve this. So, yeah, I mean, how were you able to establish? जैसे आपने कहा आप मीडिया में नहीं है, ऐसा नहीं है कि भाई आप कॉन्सर्ट्स कवर कर रहे थे, आपका ऑलरेडी कोई ब्लॉग साइट थी और सबको पता है. कम से कम हमारा तो ये था कि चलो हमने अभी तो खैर पता नहीं अब we would love to interview others, but we're building a little bit of a record, we have some work product, we can kind of show that around to people कि भाई we've covered these topics etc. तो how were you able to establish that trust? क्या सीन रहा है, कैसे आपने सबसे राब्ता किया and फिर उनके initial जवाब जो आए शायद resistant होंगे, so how did you convince them that this is a project worth interviewing for?
Well, काफी musicians को तो मैंने Facebook Messenger के through reach किया था, and जब काफी musicians comfortable हो गए थे, they shared numbers of other musicians. तो सबसे पहले तो मैं call या message करके यही बता था कि मेरा नाम तैयब है and I'm writing a book on Pakistani rock music. तो उनका फौरन जो initial reaction जो होता था वो wow होता था, and instantly है ना एक trust वहीं है ना build हो जाता था, क्योंकि वो फिर खुद कहते थे कि any information you need tell me, क्या क्या questions हैं. मैं highlight करना चाहूँगा कि असद अहमद साहब है ना बहुत है ना helpful थे, because he's been active in the music.
Honestly, when you said कि the person said send me your questions, I'll help you, मेरे immediately ना मेरे ज़हन में असद अहमद का वो आया, तज़किरा आया. I don't know why I thought Asad Ahmed would be the one to be the most helpful.
He is a very humble guy. I met him thrice so far, and he's a genuinely nice guy जो आजकल के ज़माने में आपको नहीं मिलेंगे.
Indeed, man, definitely.
Wow, no, that's I've heard of that, and I've heard that from anyway. No, I mean, I don't know if you have.
I've never talked to him directly, but he sent me a very nice message for my birthday that I was talking about.
Right.
A very nice one, man. And then, my wife had his WhatsApp number, and every now and then we would message him, and he would always respond, like very nicely.
Well, it's funny though, and Tayyab, I don't know if you, of course, हर कोई ऐसा नहीं होता, ऐसे scene में, और लेकिन it's funny because sometimes I will come across people's Twitter accounts, or especially folks who Pakistan में तो obviously बहुत ही famous हुए, और वो भी एक अलग बात है कि किस तबके में हुए, right? I mean, because obviously Pakistani rock music, as you've mentioned, I think in the beginning of the book, it didn't quite rank as high as some of the other genres. दूसरे जो genre थे वो काफी और widely known होते थे और widely popular.
Because you can't mutak to it, man.
Yeah, Pakistani rock music was considered the pariah, I think, of the Pakistani music scene. Lekin, when I come across...
You can't shake your, you know what?
Yeah, well, I mean, true. Although I guess we also like bang our heads more. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, I think, I mean, obviously shout outs to people who helped you. But I've always gotten the impression that these guys are actually quite happy to help, because it's almost like they're the underdogs, right? Matlab scene mein, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but पूरा पाकिस्तान में ठीक है हमारा काफी हम लोगों को पता है कि भाई ये बहुत फेमस थे और हम तो मरते थे उनको देखने के लिए और सुनने के लिए. But a lot of these guys are kind of like everyday guys, right? And they're actually just working like, just everyday sort of jobs now and have moved on in their careers. But I'm sure कि बहुत ही fondly remember करते होंगे. तो आपके interviews में क्या generally speaking, was everybody quite happy to talk to you, and were they quite nostalgic of the scene? Or was there any I mean, you don't have to name names, but was there any bitterness about the scene, or gosh, main nahi karta kabhi? What was the overall impression?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. If anybody has any negative memories of the scene.
Negative memories, so particularly regarding breakups जो हुई है ना, या कोई band member छोड़ गया, या फिर कोई gig lose हो गई, या फिर किसी और band ने वो organizers को कहा कि यार इस band को निकाल दो and place another band जिसमें my friends, and there was a lot of bitterness there. वो मुझे काफी under wraps रखनी पड़ी in the book. However, जो जी, because एक चीज मैंने जो learn किया ना by interviewing nearly 40 musicians, Pakistani music community is not a close-knit community, unfortunately. जी
Really?
इसलिए ये काफी
Yeah, and you said you weren't able to publish this, huh?
काफी चीजें मुझे
So,
नहीं include करनी पड़ी.
so do you have time to talk off here about all of this stuff? I'd like to know some of these details, man.
चले मैं I can
मजाक कर रहा हूँ, man. Whatever
Yeah,
you're
whatever you're
comfortable
comfortable with, Tayyib.
तो मगर ओवरऑल इम्प्रेशन काफी अच्छा था. मतलब म्यूजिशियंस वर वेरी जेन्युइनली हेल्पफुल एंड हम्बल भी थे. मैं एक चीज बताना चाहूंगा. आई कॉन्टेक्टेड जुनेद खान ऑफ कॉल. इवन दो ही इज एन एक्टर ना, उन्होंने अच्छा खासा टाइम निकाला था टू टॉक टू मी ऑन कॉल ना. एंड ही वाज वेरी ओपन. मतलब आप बता नहीं सकेंगे कि ही इज अ ए-लिस्ट एक्टर नाउ. मतलब ही वाज जी
अच्छा,
मतलब
really?
मतलब काफी है ना. मतलब ही वाज ओपन. इनफैक्ट मैं एक वाकया बताऊंगा. मैं कजन ने है ना कॉन्सर्ट अटेंड किया था कॉल का. सो ही वेंट बैक स्टेज एंड ही वाज एक्सपेक्टिंग कि जुनेद लिफ्ट नहीं कराएंगे एंड जुल्फी लिफ्ट कराएंगे, बट द ऑपोजिट हैपेंड. उसने बताया कि जुल्फी डिडंट गेट आउट ऑफ द बस इवन दो ही वेव्ड एट हिम, मगर जुनेद वाज मीटिंग एवरीवन एंड शेकिंग हैंड्स एंड टॉकिंग टू एवरी फैन दैट कम क्रॉस बैक स्टेज.
That's awesome, man. That is great. And even on the stage, Junaid kind of seems like, there's guys out here to have fun. Uski jo bhi maine videos वगैरह देखे, he's having a good time in there, and he likes being around the people that he's playing with and the people in the audience.
That reminds me of actually a couple of episodes or like encounters in my life. कि एक बार तो मैं कराची गया था 2004 में, और आपने ये भी लिखा है कि नूरी की जो मतलब जो राइज थी उस जमाने में, obviously with 2003, I think you actually cite specific numbers कि how many concerts they did from Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad. I think it was like in the hundreds or something in like a matter of weeks or months or something. और मैं तो खैर 2003 में नहीं जा सका, लेकिन मैं समर ऑफ 2004 में गया था वापस विजिट करने के लिए. उससे पहले मैंने हाई स्कूल किया हुआ था वहाँ पे. So obviously, I was younger as well, and I was just, whether, we have our preferences. Are we more into hard rock or are we more into Sufi rock? I was kind of into everything. And you can imagine, Tayyab, I don't know if you've been able to talk to, other fans of Pakistani rock who are not in Pakistan, right? I mean, hamare liye Pakistani rock, I mean, what it stands for is not just the fact that it's great music. It's the fact that it's a point of connection to our motherland, right? In a way that is relatable to how we grew up and what we experienced. Rock may generally be on the decline in America and the West, but at that time, I mean, it was just a natural point of continuation, right? Between our lives in America and our lives in Pakistan, or identity, I guess, in connection to Pakistan. तो मुझे याद है कि मेरे cousin लेके गया था किसी शीशा लाउंज. I don't know what that does to my reputation, but anyway, तो हम शीशा लाउंज में गए वहाँ क्लिफ्टन में. और अच्छा, मेरे मजे की बात ये, मेरा जो cousin थे, older than me, like maybe 4 years older, he was just into a generally another style of music. मतलब ऐसी बात नहीं है कि वो नहीं सुनते थे जुनून वगैरह, लेकिन जुनून तो खैर हर कोई सुनता था यार, obviously, right? मतलब लेकिन जो बाकी bands थे ये तो मतलब they were more underground, and ठीक है उन्होंने they eventually came to the mainstream, like Call and EP and like Rosen and all these bands, like, but especially at that time they were not that well known, but I knew about it because obviously I was on the message boards and that's how I connected. तो मैंने मुड़ के देखा, and I see Ali Noor, and I see Bilal Maqsood and Gumby all hanging out on this table. मतलब जैसे कि कुछ है ही नहीं, और मैं बैठा हूँ, मेरी आंखें फट गई, and I'm just like, oh my god. And so I go, and I mean, my cousin is like, नहीं यार क्या कर रहे हो? And I'm just like, नहीं, मैं तो जाऊंगा, मैं भाई 2 महीने के लिए आया हूँ सिर्फ यहाँ पे, मुझे, I'm not gonna pass this opportunity up. And I went, and Ali was really gracious. He talked to me. He was actually like, अच्छा अमेरिका से आए आप, blah blah blah. वहाँ भी सुनते हैं आप लोग? मैंने कहा हाँ. तो and चलो ठीक है, Ali and Bilal, like they were like pretty up there. The next like week, I met Faraz Anwar.
Wow.
Right after I seen a concert of him, just hanging out with like 3 of his friends.
And that's crazy.
At a Pizza Hut in Gulshan Iqbal, And मैं यकीन करें यार तैयब, none of my cousins, मतलब चाहे वो like you know मुझसे बड़े हो मुझसे किसी को भी नहीं पता था कि कौन है. And he was so pleased. And वो तो खैर मैंने खो दी वो रिसीट, लेकिन मैंने जाके अपने मामू से रिसीट ली बाकायदा और मैंने कहा कि can I have this so I can get his autograph. And he's like, आप कैलिफोर्निया से? मैंने कहा हाँ. मैंने कहा आप कैलिफोर्निया में सुनते हैं हमारी हमारी म्यूजिक? मैंने कहा yes, like you have like I mean at least 30 fans that I know of. So I mean, these guys, I mean, I feel like are generally quite approachable. And again, I mean, I imagine. So I guess my question more is like, is there a feeling a little bit? Chalo theek hai, bitterness to hogi breakups ke bare mein, but is there a feeling of like a little bit of a connection, like a fraternity, like a brotherhood between these guys? I mean, do they talk fondly of each other? Like, is that something that exists between them?
For answering that question, मैं पहले ये बताना चाहता हूँ कि फराज अनवर एंड अली नूर दे बोथ वर वेरी वेलकमिंग टू मी ना. बल्कि अली नूर ने तो मुझे खुद कॉल की थी, उसने कहा कि तुमने मैसेज किया था, आई एम कॉलिंग यू आंसर टू आंसर योर क्वेश्चन. मतलब वाओ.
That's amazing.
एंड फराज अनवर को तो मैं हर वीकेंड कॉल करता था एंड वो हमेशा टाइम निकालते थे टू आंसर माय क्वेश्चन. नाउ रिगार्डिंग योर क्वेश्चंस, मोस्ट असल में म्यूजिशियंस जितने हैं ना पाकिस्तान में, उनके अपने ग्रुप्स हैं. ठीक है. जी. एंड सम जी, मतलब देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ ग्रुपिज्म इन पाकिस्तान म्यूजिक फ्रेटर्निटी. So obviously, if you're part of the group, you'll speak fondly of each other. But if you're not, and ये मैं देखा है and सुना भी है, musicians tend to talk, मतलब criticize the other's guitar playing or drum playing skills. So there's that.
That's
Yeah,
interesting, man.
I did notice that. I did notice that. And even I
नहीं
don't
तो it's kind of वाज़े है ना कि जैसे कोक स्टूडियो में एक ही fraternity आती है हमेशा, right? You only see those same people, the same group of people in Coke Studio.
Notice करें, Salman Albert and Samal Ghafoor have never appeared in Coke Studio.
Exactly. Right.
right.
So that's that's very
And
interesting.
Tayyab, I think at one point, yeah, no, definitely. You talked about, I think, मैं याद करने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ, Shadam Xavier, I think, was talking about Gumby. That wasn't guitaring skills necessarily, but he even said that Gumby's skills as a musician and a player were better than the rest of you, which was like quite interesting that you were able to get such answers actually.
मैं इससे भी एक ज़्यादा एक्सट्रीम आंसर मुझे मिला था, मगर वो मैंने पहले डाला था, बाद में रिमूव कर दिया था. मतलब सेम टॉपिक है, मतलब इट्स टू एक्सट्रीम.
Wow, interesting. That's interesting. Oh wow, this is a great. This
Actually, I want to
go ahead.
go back to Ahmad's question about, and I want to, if you want to, if I can tie this into जब ये process जो था आपका, when you started writing this book, and in terms of, I think Hamad mentioned, because the scene is not very mainstream, people not, they don't have that same notoriety as pop stars would. तो पहले तो ये बताएं कि जब आपने फैसला किया, you said I'm going to write this book, तो उसमें से जिन जिन लोगों ने आपसे कहा कि are you crazy, like why would you want to do this is a waste of time, how many of those people were actually artists and how many were just your family and friends?
Actually किसी ने है ना मुझे नहीं कहा था कि are you crazy.
वाकई
जी, मतलब सिर्फ
यार I would think कि लोग कहेंगे कि भाई क्या कर रहे हो ये.
एक्चुअली सिर्फ एक बंदे ने कहा था कि ये ना करो, वो मैं खुद था. क्योंकि मुझे तो लग रहा था नो वन विल रीड इट. मैं तो इनिशियली से पीडीएफ एक ऑनलाइन रिलीज कर दी. मैं कहा किसी ने पढ़ लिया तो ठीक है, ना पढ़ा तो नहीं ठीक. मैंने पाकिस्तानी गिटारिस्ट का जो फेसबुक ग्रुप है ना, वहाँ मैंने नाम अपलोड कर दी थी. मुझे लगा 3-4 लाइक आ जाएंगे, मगर काफी लोगों ने फिर रिक्वेस्ट किया कि हमें हार्ड कॉपी चाहिए. मैं अपने पब्लिशर से कहा कि ये सीन है. उसने फिर एक नया बैच पब्लिश किया and people are buying it, and कुछ musicians को मैं personally जाके ना hard cover दिया है.
Zabardast, man. That's a beautiful moment, dude. That's amazing, man.
Yeah, really, really remarkable. So Tayyib, I have, and I can imagine that sometimes we are our own biggest critic. That's really great that you got the support of everyone around you, and especially the people in the scene. So, ये बताएं कि I guess I just have some questions. So one thing that I wanted to ask was how long did this overall take you? मतलब आपकी
4 years.
how many?
4 years.
4 years.
Wow. Okay, so 4 years.
And that's incidentally right after JJ's passing. Right.
नहीं, Junaid Jamshed, I think he was alive when I was writing it, and so was Amir Zaki.
Wow.
Wow. अच्छा तो मतलब ये okay, got it. So this is a little bit earlier, and so I take it then your timeline थी क्योंकि you obviously talk about Junoon's reunion as you know, obviously a signal of hope. कि मतलब, you know, the scene can kind of make some sort of resurgence. And I do want to ask you your opinion about. Okay, this is a very controversial topic amongst our group. You know, has Coke Studio had a hand in kind of I don't want to say destroying the rock scene,
Can
but
I
I
say
would
it?
say eroding it. Yeah.
You mind if I say it? Killing the rock scene?
I want to get your take on that.
अच्छा जो बातें तुम लोग नहीं कहना चाह रहे ना मुझे बता दो मैं बोल दूंगा.
मैं तो खैर कह भी दूंगा लेकिन yeah, Ali Bhai usually is the one who kind of gets into controversial things. But Tayyib, I wanted to ask you though, you know, Ali and Salman, you had one section where you were talking obviously about the breakup, you know, and I also, of course, I want to say that as a show, we also don't necessarily just focus on the breakup. I don't know if you heard our episodes on Junoon. We had to do an entire series, and you know, we focus on their politics, their spiritual religious identity. I mean, you know, it was a great discussion. But just to kind of get it clear, it seems like you had asked Ali about, you know, his opinion on sort of the breakup and why it happened, and he cited reasons that it started becoming a little bit of a cash cow, and it was kind of going too commercial, and he didn't like that feel. And then, of course, you know, the kind of direction and the songwriting aspects and all that. And then Salman actually refuted those things. तो मतलब एक तो बात ये कि how was it interacting with them on these issues? मतलब were they quite okay with it, and or did it take you some time to kind of talk to them? और दूसरा मेरा ये सवाल है कि was this all before? I mean, this must have been before the reunion. So, you know, I mean, at that time, like, I guess there was still like a little bit of a rift between them, or perhaps they just agreed to disagree and then they got back together for the reunion. But yeah, I wanted to ask him how was their attitude to responding to your questions?
Okay, Salman Ahmed साहब से तो मैंने regarding the breakup मैंने questions I think 2016 या 17 में है ना पूछे थे या फिर 18 मतलब way back before the reunion.
अच्छा.
तो जी, and
Yeah,
he
that's
was
probably right after the Dur Bahut Dur album, right?
जी, तो he was quite open about the breakup because उन्होंने अपनी autobiography में पूरे जुनून का breakup less than 2 lines में explain किया. तो उनसे है ना बहुत मैंने क्वेश्चन पूछे थे एंड ही वाज ओपन टू आंसरिंग देम. हाउएवर अली असमत साहब से है ना मैंने क्वेश्चन उनसे ब्रेकअप के नहीं पूछे बिकॉज उन्होंने ढेर सारे इंटरव्यूज में और काफी ऐसी फुटेज मुझे एक इंडियन फैन ने दी थी अली असमत की जो नेट में आपको नहीं मिलेगी. वहां से मुझे उनके रीजन ऑफ द ब्रेकअप मिल गए थे. तो अली असमत से क्वेश्चन मैंने उनके बिफोर हिज म्यूजिक करियर के है ना पूछे थे कि आप पहले क्या करते थे, किस यूनिवर्सिटी में पहले पढ़ते थे. ही वाज अ बैंकर इनिशियली. तो उस तरह के फैक्ट्स उनसे मिल गए.
Sure. There are a lot of details, Ali Azmat, in more recent, even before the reunion, like immediately before the reunion, there's an interview of him with Ifat Umar, which is a very detailed and very entertaining interview. So a lot of these points are in there as well.
I don't think मैंने नेट पे कोई इंटरव्यू इन दोनों का मैंने छोड़ा था. एंड मुझे और भी है ना, मुझे एक इंडियन एक है पावन रवात, शायद नाम सुना हो. उसका एक यूट्यूब जी ढेर अर्ली 90s एंड लेट 90s की जितनी भी जुनून म्यूजिक वीडियोस है ना नेट पे, वो उसके यूट्यूब चैनल. सो आई रीच्ड आउट टू हिम. काफी उसके जो इंटरव्यूज थे वो कॉपीराइट स्ट्राइक से है ना टेकन डाउन हो गए थे फ्रॉम यूट्यूब. तो वो उसने मुझे फिर गूगल ड्राइव में भेजे.
अच्छा,
तो जी
yeah, in general ये जो I want to get both of you guys' opinion on this. In general, ये जो breakups जो होते हैं, I mean, in any team situation, you're gonna have bitterness and rivalries, competitiveness between members, and then vis-a-vis Western artists, क्योंकि obviously rock scene हमारा तो है ही Western based. तो यहाँ पर आप देखें कि डेव मस्टेन का फंडा हुआ मेटालिका से, और फिर वो 10 साल के बाद आराम से स्टेज पे they're performing, talking to each other, and when they're asked about their breakups and what kind of bitterness they had, they will very openly talk about it and objectively talk about it, and they will admit their faults, and they will, also relate like things that they felt that was done wrong to them. The cool is that's, you can observe that in any team situation between athletes and musicians and stuff. हमारे जो पाकिस्तान में जो हैं, did you feel कि even after all these years, certain bands that have been broken up still have grudges, or are they? Because I noticed there is a reluctance to talk openly about their controversies and their rivalry and whatever, or जो भी reasons to break up के. So I mean, is it because they still hold a sense of bitterness about those events?
बिटरनेस तो है काफी तो नहीं, कुछ म्यूजिशियंस हैं वो अपने फॉरवर्ड बैंड मेट से अभी तक मतलब इन टच नहीं है, मतलब उन्होंने कांटेक्ट खत्म कर दिया था. फ्यू एग्जांपल्स हैं, काफी एग्जांपल ऐसे भी हैं जो मतलब दे आर नॉट पार्ट ऑफ द बैंड एनीमोर बट दे हैव मेंटेन कांटेक्ट. एंड ये भी वेरी करता है कि कौन से म्यूजिशियंस ओपन है अबाउट द ब्रेकअप एंड कौन से ओपन नहीं है अबाउट द ब्रेकअप. फॉर एग्जांपल आरओ के सारे मेंबर्स दे वर एक्सीडिंगली ओपन अबाउट देयर ब्रेकअप.
अच्छा, very nice.
जी, उनका उनका तो ब्रेकअप बहुत मतलब इंटेंस था, मतलब कराची
याद है बल्कि इन लोगों ने उसी वक्त काफी ओपनली बातें करना शुरू कर दी थी.
जी, कराची हाई कोर्ट में भी इनका फिर केस हुआ था, मतलब इट वाज वेरी इंटेंस एंड दे वर वेरी ओपन. However, EP members, they weren't too open.
Acha, EP?
जी,
I mean, EP recently performed in Pepsi, right? With Ahmad Ali and Fawad, everybody was there.
I don't think it was even, well, I think it was just Fawad and Ahmad Ali.
तो जुल्फी ने था उसमें?
नहीं था जुल्फी. seven members थे.
अच्छा.
जी, they performed once. But ये 2007 की बात है, मतलब जब उनका ब्रेकअप हुआ था, मतलब they're not too open about it.
Well, maybe I mean
तो सब खत्म ही हो रहा था ना, क्योंकि कोक
yeah,
लगा था.
हाँ ये भी है. And then
क्या कह रहे हो हम तुम, like what are you saying?
No, I was saying, do you think that it was because maybe, I mean, some bands weren't open to talking about it? I mean, EP gave, yes, you're right. I remember 2018 का जो season था, I think उसमें उन्होंने perform किया था हमेशा. So do you think it's because maybe, I mean, they just have decided कि भाई it's fine, we are over it, मतलब हम ज़्यादा गन नहीं फैलाएंगे, ठीक है जो हुआ सो हुआ, again we're back kind of together, or not together, but like we're sort of fine and amicable now.
Actually, I won't mention the name. One member was very persistent about okay, let's do this in the long run, na? Okay, let's continue EP. But rest of the members उनके separate jobs हैं. In fact, जो bassist है उनके सजाद अली खान, he's an academic now. And काफी जो बाकी जो musicians हैं, मतलब बाकी जो members हैं, they are doing separate jobs, so they weren't too comfortable with it. But they're on amicable terms now, but they won't do EP.
अच्छा ये बताओ कि आरओ में किस किस से बात हुई?
आरओ में मेरी फारूक अहमद साहब से हुई थी, खालिद खान साहब से हुई थी, एंड नबील निहाल चिश्ती से भी हुई थी, कामी जी से भी, एंड जो उनके जो नए जो गिटारिस्ट जो आए थे असदुल हफीज, इन पांचों से हुई थी मेरी.
Achha, and then I think Kami and Farooq, I know he's in the US. I think Kami is also in the US. So did you have to call them up?
उस कामी जी से तो मेरी बात है ना जूम पे हुई थी, एंड फारूक साहब तब आए हुए थे पाकिस्तान में फॉर द आरओ रियूनियन ना. जब तक वो यहाँ थे उन्होंने मुझे काफी बैक स्टेज चीजें बताई थी. एंड खालिद खान साहब तो इधर ही होते हैं, नबील साहब दुबई में होते हैं, उनसे भी जूम पे बात हुई थी.
यार आरओ का जो ब्रेकअप था ना वो पर्सनल लिया मैंने काफी. That hurt me on a personal level, man. Because that was my, that was going to be my band. Vital Signs Junoon के बाद I thought Aro was going to be the torch bearers. तो उनके उस पे बड़ा दुख हुआ था मुझे.
उनको fame it hit them too soon and बस. मतलब अगर मैं फील करता हूँ आरो वो बैंड है जिसकी अपनी एक अलग किताब होनी चाहिए, क्योंकि उनकी हिस्ट्री बहुत रिच है. उनकी जो मतलब जो इंटरनल कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स थे ना, काफी चीजें मुझे रिमूव करनी पड़ी थी, क्योंकि वो बहुत वन साइडेड लग रहा था, मतलब कि एक ही बैंड को बहुत कवर किया. RO deserves a book of their own.
Now that's interesting that you were cautious about, being fair in your assessments. कि one-sided नहीं होना चाहिए.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, this is all. Yeah, and I agree with you. I think a lot of these bands, in fact, yeah, कम से कम ठीक है. आरो की तो खैर अपनी होनी चाहिए जगह क्योंकि you're right. I mean, it may have been too soon, too fast, too soon, but I mean, मतलब उनका जो rise हुआ था और आपने compare भी किया था कि कारवां जैसा band, मतलब obviously not saying that Otto was not the quality or the musicianship. I mean, it was excellent.
अच्छा just Ahmad real quick, I want to make one thing clear and put it on the table कि जल का breakup जो है उस पे मुझे कोई दुख नहीं हुआ. Okay, carry on.
और to be honest with you, मैंने उनका section इतना ज़्यादा पढ़ा भी नहीं, तो I'm not going to talk about them anyway. But
I'm just having fun, man.
obviously, at the end of the day, ये हमारा podcast है, and the truth is कि yes, we don't. There's some bands that we don't care about. और मजे की बात ये, there's some bands that I care about that I wanted to cover that Ali had no interest, but I was like, no, we have to, because I mean, if we are talking about the scene, you cannot just skip over bands like this. So anyway, लेकिन
तो तुम कारवां के बारे में कुछ कह रहे थे.
हाँ तो कारवां मतलब obviously कारवां, I mean, I think you talked about this where I mean truly fans felt like they were just a genuine matlab rock band. Matlab, I mean, what can I say? I still continue to listen to their music and I am just so flabbergasted कि उन्होंने जो मतलब जो दूसरे bands ने जो मतलब notoriety जो हासिल की थी कारवां ने नहीं की. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and I want to ask you about your opinions on commercialization, because I mean, if you don't mind me saying this, Tayyab, you seem a little bit and this is it's a very common amongst genuine rock fans or genuine music fans, okay, the idea that as soon as a band begins to commercialize itself, it begins to change, it begins to आपने ये भी mention किया कि EP का जो patriotic मतलब कह सकते हैं obviously is to an extent आगोश, they stayed, despite the fact that they were approached to do this, I think by their sponsor, Pepsi or whoever, yeah, that they still did not change. But you have a little bit of I sensed it, a little bit of a bias. So I do want to talk about that, and I want to understand your thoughts on that. But let me ask you this, why do you think Mark Levine, I think his name is, scholar at UCI. By the way, we grew up very close to UC Irvine. He goes, and basically, takes stock of all of the rock scene across the Middle East, Egypt, Iran, etc., and goes to Pakistan and TK, political climate, though I can guess. I mean, obviously, I don't know about Egypt, but I can guess that, more so than, although Iran, obviously, we should be complex in our analysis. We shouldn't just, but obviously it's a little bit more difficult there to establish a rock scene than perhaps Pakistan. And I think that needs to be, kind of noted and talked about. Lekin, what do you think? Why do you think Pakistan had developed such a rich music scene? Sorry, rock scene in particular. What did you find in your analysis or your research? I think NFP talks about, Nadeem Farooq Paracha talks about the fact that there was the existence of these Karachi nightclubs, right? And, especially the Christian Goanese community, I think, who a lot of these drummers, right? I mean, Gumby and others that have come from, that, they had a rich history of jazz music, for instance, right? And like that sort of genre. So, I mean, but why? I mean, why are these other, like, even non-Christian, like, middle-class kids from Lahore and from Karachi, and Karachi in particular, obviously, but Lahore as well, and even Islamabad, right? I mean, some of these other towns. Why? I mean, what's your thoughts on like how this developed into such a rich scene? And was it generational? Matlab, kyunki we don't quite have that anymore. Obviously, you were listing out the birth dates, and if you notice, all the birth dates are from like ranging from like 19 at the most 1972 to like 1985, right? I mean, like that's that whole generation.
I don't think it's a generational thing क्योंकि अभी भी काफी मतलब right now, for example, Karakoram and Black Hour काफी अच्छे rock bands हैं. I reviewed their albums on my website rockistan.net. And regarding your other question, despite such oppression, how was Pakistan able to cultivate so good rock music? I think because rock music is affords a outlet for venting, So it suited the musicians.
Right, right. I think that's related to also like you in the early part of the book, you talk quite a bit about political situations and how that kind of fueled the whole movement that started.
Yes, the political scenario and the conditions of the Pakistani music scene, they are intertwined.
Mm.
Right. And you also mentioned that there was a little bit. Obviously, everybody knows kind of. After Ziaul Haq's death, I mean, there was a little bit of an opening up, and a lot of the talent that had been bottled up in many ways came to the scene, but then further opened up and liberalized under Musharraf, who was much more open about the sort of electronic media and काफी मतलब channels भी आए उस जमाने में. A lot of things opened up because of it.
Mm.
The point about being intertwined, that's interesting in terms of politics and the music scene, but the music scene itself, you see the first batch of people, and I think you kind of, claim the origins being vital signs and barbarians. I think if we can trace like everything back to at least those two, unki सारे की stories भी intertwined है, like everybody that comes out of it, Shehzad Mughal ho gaye, ya phir, they all have like these parallel stories. I think you did quite a brilliant job of like, carrying that through the book. Right? तो उसमें किस किस के like
Yes, it was challenging, but
उसमें किन किन से डायरेक्टली बात करने का मौका मिला? बारबेरियंस के हो गए या फिर
Barbarians में तो असद अहमद साहब थे. He was the lead guitarist and initially the rhythm guitar player of the band. And Barbarians से है ना से अगला जो एक rock band आया था ना Before Junoon, it was Final Cut.
Oh right, that's Shehzad
तो
Mughal.
उनके lead guitar player
Rizwan, right? Yeah.
जी उसमें गिटार प्लेयर होते थे रिजवान लतीफ खान साहब ना. ही इज अ डिस्टेंट कजन ऑफ राज अलवर. तो उनको मैंने फेसबुक पे रीच आउट किया एंड ही उन्होंने एक माइक्रोसॉफ्ट वर्ड डॉक्यूमेंट में नहीं सॉरी माइक्रोसॉफ्ट वर्ड डॉक्यूमेंट में नहीं फेसबुक मैसेंजर पूरी उन्होंने बैंड की हिस्ट्री नैरेट करके ना भेजी थी मुझे.
जबरदस्त यार. अच्छा, Rizwan, he's in some of the Facebook groups. I think I might even have him added. I don't know if maybe that's his music page or something, but I have him added to my personal Facebook. तो उनके तो मैं देखते रहता हूँ updates. लेकिन now he's that one person that like even Hamad doesn't even know about him probably. लेकिन he was the guy who was one of the originators, जो कि बिल्कुल ही गायब हो गए सीन से, नुसरत हुसैन की तरह ना एकदम से गायब हो गए. तो क्या like did he have anything to say about that?
नहीं मतलब उसके बाद वो चले गए थे. आई थिंक कौन सी डैलस आई थिंक सिटी अमेरिका की वहां पे शिफ्ट हो गए थे. जी
तो तब से वहीं पर ही है ये.
जी काफी सालों से उधर ही है.
अच्छा, क्योंकि that's like I'm looking at his playing style and everything, and it's just like Adnan Bhai, Faraz Anwar type का उनके style है, progressive rock and whatnot. लेकिन उनका तो कहीं like bands की उसमें besides Final Cut कहीं नाम आता नहीं है इनका.
तो फाइनल कट इसमें 1988 का है ना बैंड है ना. तो ऊपर से हिस्ट्री ने प्रिजर्व नहीं किया उनको.
right. तो ऐसे और कुछ
बैंड्स हैं
मिले?
मतलब जी काफी बैंड्स मिले मतलब जिनका है ना मतलब उनको प्रिजर्व नहीं किया गया. मतलब देयर barely any mention of them online. जिसका अर्श हो गया, सर्कल.
Do you think it's because they left the scene, or is it because just the nature of the scene doesn't preserve things?
नहीं मतलब lack of preservation certainly plays a factor. ऊपर से they didn't disappear from the scene. For example, Arsh and Circle in दोनों rock bands में है ना तंसीर अहमद आर साहब होते थे. He then moved to a bigger project, Karwan.
Right.
जी. And काफी ढेर सारे musicians जो थे वो they moved abroad. So those bands were never mentioned again.
और ऐसा लगता है कि अभी एक्सोडस जो है वो अभी भी चल रहा है. लाइक रिसेंटली काफी लोग और मूव हुए हैं, यूएस खासतौर पे, यूएस एंड दुबई and Canada obviously looks
Well,
like
yeah, so I mean that actually I guess is a good point to yeah, I guess ask my question. और Tayyab, I'm sorry, I know my style is कि मेरे सवाल में सवाल होते हैं, तो bear with me. But you know, I guess, you know, my thought is कि, I mean, obviously, commercialization. So I mean, you know, you get into like kind of some of the stories, right? Of like, कि भाई इस बैंड ने, मतलब इस member ने ये ads किए और वो किए, और I think Nuri first came out and started doing some commercials, and you said they were heavily criticized for it. And obviously, I mean, fan base जो है वो तो मतलब उनको तो नहीं मतलब पसंद आएगा कि भाई you're selling yourself for basically, you know, change, you know, and trying to make some money, and also ruining the image and the brand of your band. But you know, I mean, Pakistan, obviously the legal regime, when you talk about copyright law and trademarks and artistic integrity and just protecting the artist's work, मतलब it's almost a lack, it's almost non-present. मतलब enforcement कहाँ है? मतलब, you know, obviously वो एक quote था फराज अनवर का, which kind of hit home for me, because Rainbow Center के तो trips थे मेरे लिए कराची में, वो तो मतलब हर दूसरे तीसरे हफ्ते की बात होती थी मेरे लिए, जब मैं समर में होता था वहाँ पे। तो मतलब कि चलो यार रेनबो सेंटर चलते हैं, वहाँ पे वीडियो गेम्स तो खैर एक बात है, लेकिन मतलब yeah, I would grab all my albums from there. I'm ashamed to admit. And if I knew any better back then, I would certainly have paid, right? Because I would have been like, these artists need our support.
नहीं तो ये रेनबो सेंटर क्या पायरेट सेंटर था क्या?
हाँ हाँ, मतलब
Oh really?
अच्छा अच्छा, मैं और मेरे कजन जाते थे, और मतलब स्टूडेंट की बिरयानी वहाँ पे लाजमी होती थी उसके बाद, लेकिन मतलब रेनबो सेंटर का ट्रिप हमेशा लगता था. एंड फराज अनवर लिटरली ही सेज इन दैट क्वोट, यू नो, तैयब quotes him as saying कि, you know, in India they had an entire, you know, legal enforcement around these issues. They prioritized it because obviously वहाँ की media industry, it's a big, you know, money maker, and it's very important that obviously taxation purposes के लिए I'm sure the state wants to cash in on that. But Pakistan में, he said, you know, Pakistan में हम तो यार रेनबो सेंटर को हम shut down नहीं कर पाते. तो he literally says that. So I mean, you know, I personally take the view that I necessarily do not criticize the band members or the bands for trying to do that, because it must have been so difficult, right, for them to try to make that money. And you know, I don't blame them for coming to this country. And uh, I don't know if this is right, लेकिन Aro के जो frontman थे, Farooq, right? So he came, what, I think to New Jersey or something, and started owning a bunch of dollar stores. And you know, I mean, when I heard that news, I was like blown away. I was like, what? I was like, you know, I mean, this legendary man having to do that. But I guess, you know, but it seems like there was a lot of critique around that. So first of all, how did these guys even make money? Was it through concerts and shows? And second, I mean, you know, I don't want to put you on the spot, and you may disagree with me. I feel like you were a little bit critical of the fact that, you know, of like the commercialization by some of these bands, or were you just trying to reflect the overall mood of rock fans?
Well, मैंने mention किया ये कि if an artist wants to go commercial, then the product he endorses should suit their music. मगर मैंने ये लिखा है कि पाकिस्तान में पॉसिबल नहीं है. However, in Western countries होता ही है कि ढेर सारे musicians, rock musicians, they either get sponsored or they endorse alcoholic drinks or motorbikes, heavy motorbikes. जबकि यहाँ you either have to get sponsored by mobile phones or cola drinks. ठीक है, मैंने criticize Fusion को किया था because they were doing an ad for a candy, which I think did not suit their music.
Right.
वो तो जुनून रियूनियन तो
हाँ,
बिस्किट
वो क्या था उसका, पॉली समथिंग, जो कैंडी थी, जो भी थी.
मेफेयर का भी फ्यूजन कैंडी था उसका. एंड वो एड इतना बुरा था कि द डायरेक्टर रिफ्यूज टू हैव हिज नेम ऑन द एड. जम.
Oh wow. Wow.
लेकिन यार ये हमेशा से रहा है इन पाकिस्तानी रॉक म्यूजिक एंड पॉप म्यूजिक के सेटअप नहीं है कोई सही तरह का, राइट? देयर इज नो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, लेकिन बंदे फिर भी ना निकाल लेते हैं और बड़े हाई लेवल का निकालते हैं म्यूजिक वगैरह. सो दैट्स अ टेस्टमेंट to their passion and their dedication, and I think those are the kind of things that we should be highlighting. Like, वो गटर में से आपने फूल निकाल लिए basically. You know what I mean? It's amazing the kind of and even the mainstream one, Noida Sign Junoon ke bhi kitne wo, and you know all the stories that you सलमान अहमद को शुरू से ही गालियां पड़ रही पहले दिन से कि कभी वो मजहबी लोग आ गए तो कभी ये लोग आ गए कभी हुकूमत वाले आ गए बार बार फोन आए जा रहे हैं किसी ना किसी से तो और उसमें भी ना बंदे ने like he created one of the top or not one of the like the top band out of all of South Asia and put Pakistan on the map.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. And मजे की बात ये है कि जैसे आपने तैयब कहा and we've been talking about कि अच्छा पाकिस्तानी अवाम के लिए कम से कम मेरा जो तजर्बा था कि पाकिस्तानी अवाम के लिए it differed of course across I think the older generation perhaps didn't understand rock music, but even people who were my age didn't quite have the same passion for it. Like, the funny thing is that out of all the genres, even though Pakistani awam ke liye, perhaps some of the other genres were much more popular, that rock music, because of Junoon and because some of the other bands, I mean, wo to khair, they didn't make it worldwide, but nonetheless, they became regionally quite influential. It was rock music that really put Pakistan on the map in that way. That's really incredible. I want to ask you about your opinion on Coke Studio, which you briefly talk about, and I was actually hoping that you would get into it a lot more, and perhaps in another book, inshallah, maybe you can. I don't know if you have plans.
I actually आपने question पूछा था Coke Studio का, did it hinder rock music? It didn't hinder rock music, but believe it or not, Coke Studio played an a role in declining the concert scene. I've mentioned this in the I think 11th or 12th chapter. I think 11th. तो होता ये था एंड ये काफी बार है ना ऑर्गेनाइजर्स को ब्लेम जाता है कि व्हाई आरंट यू होल्डिंग कॉन्सर्ट्स ना तो आई रीच आउट टू एन ऑर्गेनाइजर मैंने उससे पूछा कि व्हाई द कॉन्सर्ट सीन dwindled तो उसने बताया कि हुआ ये कि जब म्यूजिशियंस कोक स्टूडियो में आ जाते थे वो अपने आप को कहते थे वी आर कोक आर्टिस्ट नाउ तो वो अपनी प्राइस डबल या ट्रिपल है ना करके बताते थे एंड ऑब्वियसली उस वक्त इन्फ्लेशन के जमाने में कॉन्सर्ट्स नहीं अफोर्ड है ना कर सकते थे ऑर्गेनाइजर्स करवाना so Coke Studio plays some sort of role in dwindling the concert scene.
Yeah, no, that I mean that definitely makes sense. Or I mean obviously I think you talked about this too कि भाई उस ज़माने में obviously there was a lot of security situation obviously Pakistan में was not the best either, right? And so that scene was beginning to decline as well. I mean it's starting to it was start so I mean लेकिन अच्छा मेरी ये राय है कम से कम I don't know Ali bhai what your thoughts are and I keep saying you talk about this because I just want to make sure that Tayyib, that we know that you covered a lot of different things in your book, but you mentioned that I mean one of the critiques of Coke Studio, and even I think Ali Noor voiced this critique or at least agreed with it. Okay, Coke Studio kind of recycled a lot of the old songs. So it seemed like let me talk about from the perspective of a diaspora kid growing up in the West, right? कि मतलब मैं तो यार कब से सुनते हुए आ रहा हूँ, right? Rock music. मतलब 94, 95 की बात है कि कराची में, very young, Khala brings a cassette, 96 की बात होगी शायद, और वो कश्मकश का एल्बम जो उन्होंने जो निकाला था जुनून ने, अब वो मेरे सामने रख दिया कि मैं ये लेकर आई हूँ तुम्हारे लिए. अच्छा साथ में सज्जाद अली और ये भी आर्टिस्ट है, लेकिन मैं ये उठा के लेकर आई हूँ तुम्हारे लिए. सज्जाद तो खैर छोड़ो यार, वो मैंने साइड पे रख दी कि सर मैं कश्मकश के मतलब pardon my pun, but जुनून में गिरफ्तार हो गया मैं. मतलब obviously, right? I mean, for me, like, what the hell is this, right? So, man, अच्छा, whatever. Obviously, I'm being arrogant in my fan knowledge, but and then what happens is 2009, 10, 11 आ गया. अब ये हर कोई यहाँ पे पाकिस्तानी बच्चा जो है वो कह रहा है कोक स्टूडियो. मैंने कहा भाई आप पिछले 10 साल से हैं कहाँ वैसे? Like, where have you been the past 15 years? But what struck me was that these people were seeing the same artists that I grew up with their original content in their heyday, right? मतलब जब वो जवान थे, जब वो अपने prime में थे, And now they're seeing these guys, and chalo, theek hai, that's wonderful. I was glad that they were connecting with it. But then there was nothing, at least for me in the mainstream, nothing new coming out. Ha, ye hai ki underground scene, I'm sure tha, aur aapne discuss kiya ye. But for us here in the West, we weren't able to get that. And that was my biggest critique of Coke Studio, is that it recycled the same songs, recycled the same artists in many ways who, weren't leaving the scene. They weren't making way for the new artists. And then it stifled the development of new bands until, I think, and I don't know what the state of the show is now, like in Pepsi Battle of the Bands, that at least tried to get exposure. और उससे पहले Youth on Youth Records जो Gumby के जो project था. So yeah, I mean, is that accurate, or do you disagree? What are your thoughts on that?
इनका फॉर्मेट ये है ना, अच्छा था कि obscure and established artists को है ना प्लेटफॉर्म देते थे, and at the end of the day इनकी एक नई म्यूजिक वीडियो आ जाती थी due to that format, and popularity boost भी मिलता था. जो मुझे ये नहीं अच्छा लगता था कि they were trying to redo the classic songs. इस चीज से है ना मुझे मतलब काफी disagreements थे कि musicians shouldn't do new versions of an old song.
Right. Yeah, exactly my gripe. I don't know, Arif bhai, what your thoughts are. Lekin Tayyab, you do mention ke some of the people talked about this. I think Umran Shafiq talked about this. That it was unki jo reach thi, matlab, just by virtue of the platform and by the media, by the ways in which ke matlab, I think wo ek kahani hai ki him and Ali Azmat were in Manhattan, and they got picked up by a cab driver, a sick cab driver, a sick cab driver, and he was recognizing Umran Shafiq but not Ali Azmat because of Coke.
Yeah.
Amazing.
नहीं, मजे की बात हमार जो कही ना तुमने, that just in our own diaspora here, like you got these kids running around, hey, Coke Studio, and this guy's that. And then when we were watching Coke Studio, we're like, oh, there's Momo. He's from that, he's from Moj and Ali Azmat's band and Operate.
Can you just clarify?
There's Asad Ahmad right there. Oh, that's Gumby. Or and these guys were like finding out about these people after Coke Studio. So that was really interesting.
Yeah, by the way, Arif bhai, Momo is, just for our fans,
Umran Shafiq.
Right. I just want to make sure that everybody knows.
It took me a second to remember because I just know him as Momo.
You just know him as Momo.
That's
yeah,
exactly.
He seems like a great guy, and he seems like
he is
successful. Yeah.
Ajay, speaking of, okay, so the whole scene basically kind of rests on guitar players, right? So now looking at the cover of your book,
says the guitar player, bias a little bit,
almost.
But I agree with you.
So looking at the cover and the people that you have on there, Ali Azmat right in front. Obviously, he is the patriarch of rock and roll singing in Pakistan. And then you have Zulfi and I think Junaid Khan probably in there.
No, Amir Zaki, Mikal Hassan, Asad Ahmad, and
क्योंकि एक debate जो रहती है ना हमेशा कि who qualifies as a rock band, and then judging from the cover of your book, I was kind of anticipating that you're probably going to be more devoted to what is like raw rock bands, hard rock bands, or rock and roll, and got bands like Vital Signs or Fusion or Strings would not qualify, even though they're all like their whole catalog rests on great guitar playing too, right?
All three of them are mentioned here and there, but they don't qualify as a rock band.
But you were still like willing to include them in the whole, and very lengthy. I mean, you covered Strings and Vital Signs quite a bit.
Strings को तो मैंने barely cover किया. They mentioned as side characters in other people's story. Vital Signs की पूरी history है ना, from birth to the very end इसलिए जिक्र किया because it featured three premier rock guitarists. Salman Ahmad, Amir Zaki, and Asad Ahmad. Asad Ahmad wasn't the official member, but he was the final session player of the band. So
Right.
Wild Signs is extensively covered due to these three.
Very, very good. Now, I didn't read the part. Did you cover Fusion at all?
No, they mentioned as side characters in other people's story. For example, जब Farouk and Khalid Khan ने अपनी press conference कराई थी regarding the breakup, तो Fusion का emo साथ शामिल थे. So Fusion is mentioned as side characters in other people's stories.
So that's interesting. क्योंकि like I always think of, you know, जब ये debate आती है, I personally don't have any opinion. I mean, to me, a band is a band. Whoever's got a good guitar player and a bass player, that's what I'm listening to, right? तो जब vital signs, strings और fusion का खास तौर पे जब आता है ना, like where do they get qualified? और जब हम इनके गाने cover करते हैं हम लोग, तो we approach it the same way, you know, the chord progressions, everything is approached kind of the same way as like a Aro or Junoon songs. So like it doesn't matter to me how they're qualified. लेकिन एक इनका रहता है कि where do they go? Like which category do they fit in? Because in terms of like straight pop, I don't think anybody is more pop than Awaz Group, Haroon and Fakhir. And I think they're probably the better, more likely descendants of Nazi and Zuhair because of the you know, disco evolving into house and you know, house beats and pop, you know, those kind of beats. लेकिन वायरस साइंस और स्ट्रिंग्स का और फ्यूजन का कुछ रहता है कि यार क्या करेंगे साथ, कहाँ किस डब्बे में डालें ना.
ये जो कॉन्वर्सेशन मैं अपने फ्रेंड से करता हूँ ना, आई यूज अ टर्म प्लूरलिस्टिक बैंड्स. मतलब इट्स अ टर्म आई इन्वेंटेड टू recognize those bands who play multiple genres.
Very nice. Very nice.
Really, wow, that's very academically astute to kind of categorize it that way. I've always, I don't know, fusion को actually हमने देखा था तकरीबन 3 साल हो गए अब तो, और very very nice guys. I mean, Imu, you know, very graciously I think was talking to all of us of the तस्वीर भी दी थी हमने उनके साथ. I guess, you know, I don't know why. अच्छा, I don't know if any of you have thought about this or लेकिन I'm always fascinated by how Pakistan's rock scene is, I mean, of course unique, but it's so much more developed than India's rock scene ever got to be, despite all of the resources that I imagine Indian, you know, artists have, and of course that's not all of them, but it's just a distinct, very different flavor. Fusion always seemed to me to be a little bit more on that Indian sort of spectrum. You know, they were, I think Shafqat Amadani also even talks about like the fact that they were kind of more of like a, not an Indian style, but like kind of a obviously Hindustani classical style, which I wonder, well, it's not that they weren't popular. Obviously fusion was popular, so, you know, they did eventually become very popular, but but obviously मुझे याद है, अच्छा Tayyib, we talked about this in one of our episodes, that it was amazing how developed the scene was in the 2000s. के मुझे याद है कि मैं concerts में जाता था और मिज़राब के फैंस और नूरी के फैंस के बीच में फड्डे होते थे. मतलब आपने शायद ये कहानी सुनी होगी, but it's just amazing to me that there were fights between them because you know, the मिज़राब fans would be like, यार तुम लोग मतलब क्या ये बच्चों वाली मतलब ट्यून्स है ये सारी, और वो कहते हैं भाई तुम लोग जो कुछ समझ में नहीं आता तुम्हारे गानों में मिज़राब.
अच्छा, ये that's interesting, Hamad. Like I want to know from Tayyib कि did these artists talk about any of this stuff कि fan dedication इतनी हो गई थी, लोग लड़ रहे थे आपस में, नूरी या फिर फराजुद्दीन, ऐसी बात बताई कोई?
नहीं, ये मैंने जानबूझ के इस तरह का पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चन नहीं पूछा because it leaves a bad taste in their mouths, because the activities of fan does not represent the musician himself. It's,
Obviously, हाँ, वो तो है.
and
it's interesting that, you know, things can get that.
नूरी EP and नूरी के fans के आपस में भी है ना लड़ाइयाँ होती थी. I remember.
Right.
In fact, मुझे ये मैंने लिखा एक बार लाहौर ग्रामर स्कूल में इन दोनों का कॉन्सर्ट हुआ था. तो जब नूरी came on the stage, तो EP fans मतलब they taunted them and heckled them with the chants of EP, EP, EP.
या मुझे तो ये चीजें बहुत पसंद हैं. I'm sorry. क्योंकि यहाँ पर ये एक सिएटल में जब ये ग्रंज का सीन आ रहा था ना, तो ये कल्चर होता था कि Nirvana doesn't like Pearl Jam, so you know their fans would fight each other out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
और इनके t-shirts होते हैं कि I hate your band. You know?
Yeah, obviously, फड्डेबाजी तो, I mean, none of us really obviously are condoning that. I think what it stands for us is the fact कि यार मतलब ये scene इतना ज़्यादा developed हो गया था, मतलब इतना मतलब mature is a weird word to describe it, but the scene had matured so much that even within the same genre, generally speaking, there were inter like band kind of rivalries, right? That like they because of the taste and because of the kind of type of music, but that it was actually
Yeah, like based on their music, right?
right based on their music, yeah. So Tayyab, I mean, we should probably wrap up. Obviously, we've taken up so much of your time and we appreciate it. So ye bataएं कि, any like future projects in mind? What's your current state of? वैसे आप कराची में आजकल रावलपिंडी में रहते हैं, तो कराची में कोई खास काम हो रहा है? मतलब कोई are you working on your next project? What's going on with you? Well, obviously you've received some notoriety for this. Are other people asking you for interviews? मतलब, how was the book's reception? I would love to hear about that too.
रिसेप्शन मुझे है ना अभी तक काफी अच्छा मिला है. The Central Media contacted me. They are based in Islamabad. They said whenever you return to Rawalpindi, contact us. We want to interview. And एक लाहौर based RJ ने भी राब्ता किया. उसने कहा he bought the book and when he finishes all, he will interview me on Zoom. And Karachi में वैसे कुछ domestic issues से आया हूँ. My sister is alone these days with her 2 kids, so I'm accompanying her. And the response has been overwhelming. I've received many messages on Facebook from unknown people, and they're saying that they appreciate that at least someone has documented the rich history of Pakistani rock music for the very first time. And well, that's about it.
Yeah, तो हमारा अच्छा हुआ ना कि इनको अभी पकड़ लिया before he got too famous.
We're very excited about the fact that, I mean, I don't know, if any podcast has reached out to you, but we're very, very happy, and thank you so much for even making the time. So yeah, any future like plans, projects? Is your mind thinking about something? You don't have to share if you don't want to at this point, but we'd love to know if you're going to stay engaged and kind of contribute further and keep some of the works coming along.
My current project related to music is reviewing rock albums. I've made a website, rockistan.net. You can download the ebook from there and you can read the album reviews. I recently reviewed Asadam's 2 solo albums. Raj Anwar's recently released solo albums and debut albums of rock bands Karakoram and Black Hour. And some people ask me if I'm going to write another book. I say this as a joke. Maybe 30 years later, I'll write a part 2 of my current book with the title Rock Revisited.
No, yeah, but we should have you again, and you can do some review for us and teach us a little bit about music too.
I only review rock music. Pakistan.
Sikha dena maybe rock music.
That's wow. That is excellent. And I'm actually, yeah. You're by the way, it's the website's very well designed. Is it who designed it, by the way? Because the cover was also really, I mean, it seems like it's obviously just like a cover. I don't want to give a credit to whoever designed it.
The website still needs a lot of work. It's newly launched. It was designed by my friend. His name is Mustafa.
Perfect. Yeah, I see that. Powered by MustafaZadi.com. Excellent. Yeah, and folks, obviously in addition to reading the book, which as you can tell, you can download, for free. Tayyab, is it for free? I mean, not that.
Yes, it is for free because my main purpose was to promote the legacies of the musicians. Right. But anyone who wants a hard copy, he can buy it.
Excellent. That's really fantastic. And to be honest with you, as I was reading this past week, I actually was like, yeah, I gotta buy this book because we wanna appreciate you, we want to support you. You should be entitled to the fruits of your labor, and just really appreciate the time that you've taken. So folks, whoever's listening, Rockistan.net, check out the website. He's got some good reviews. It seems like you covered Karakum's Elane Jung, which is a new album. So I'm looking forward to reviewing that, and then download the PDF, but also order a hard copy. You can find the links on the website. Anybody, any last thoughts, last comments?
Yeah, I'm really really impressed. And this is also a testament to my earlier point about, artists' dedication and them doing this work purely for the passion. I mean, you look at our brother here, Tayyib Khalil. He put 4 years of work into a book simply because he wanted to preserve the history, and then he put it up online for free download without any motivation or without any desire for profits, which is, again, it's a testament to this whole movement. And, that's what we like to be a part of it. And I like to think we are a part of it. And, and in the end, I just like to say we want more. That's why podcast is called Dil Mange Aur. Ye dil mange aur.
Yeah, Dave, I'm not sure if you know, but we actually have a history of playing in a band together, and obviously, well, let's just say that we've been a little bit more successful with our podcast than our musical and rockstar endeavors. But Tayyab, thank you so much. Tayyab, any last thoughts for fans or for us, or just whatever you wanted to say for a couple of minutes? Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me here. This was my very first interview, and it was a pleasure talking to you. And anyone has any criticisms regarding my book, I'm open to it.
Excellent. That's a great little note to end on, and because at the end of the day, we want to be able to talk about these things, and really, Tayyab, your contribution is truly amazing, and we're just we're honored to be able to interview you first. But thanks, Tayyab, for joining us, and Nazreen, thank you so much for joining us, and for another episode of Dil Mange Aur. And yeah, as always, give us feedback on our Facebook page. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you thought about the episode. Give some feedback, thoughts, reflections, and we will see you very, very soon, inshallah.
By the way, you said it wrong. You said Nazreen. There's no weird. You should have said Samin.
I know, I should have. That's right. चले कोई बात नहीं, व्यू तो दिल से होती है, वो सिर्फ नजरों से
दिल की नजर से देख रहे हो.
चले, thank you so much, Tayyab. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Allah Hafiz.
Hafiz.